Hello. There we go. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Jamie, for the intro. And I'll just do a quick intro here. First of all, this is a panel 0 to 1 Founder's Journey. We'll be talking about really, how these folks got their start, what's been the challenges, what's been their successes looked like up until now, and where are they going, and how they got support along the way. Brief intro on myself. As Jamie mentioned, I'm at Ava Labs. I run our new accelerator, Codebase. We just launched it last week. If you haven't seen it, take a look. We'll be doing our first cohort of 15 companies in early 2024. Registration is now open, and you can find more about it on our website. So if you are an early stage founder, please take a look and perhaps apply. With that, though, I'm going to turn us over to the panel, and first we'll do a quick round of intros, so everyone could just spend 2 minutes saying a little bit about yourself and your company, and then we can dive into some questions.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ali. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Dynasty Studios. We're a Web3 game studio, building games, actually starting almost 2011 with Web2, and then kind of moved to Web3 in the last 3 years. Again, I've been the founder, an entrepreneur, almost 14 years now. I started my own Web2 game studio and then kind of moved to Web3. I have a bachelor in computer science. I have a master's degree in game design, and I'm not doing none of that. Actually, I'm just in the business side recently and on the production. So that's a kind of short intro of myself.
Hi, I'm Winny.eth. I'm one of the co-founders of Gossip Protocol, which is a vessel for causing chaos on chain. My background is, I come from a background in computer science, and I've spent the majority of my professional career in the crypto industry. And my passion with what comes for Gossip Protocol is to work with other platforms, protocols, and products to actually start using them and bring activations to life.
Thank you so much, Avalanche, for having us today. My name is Evin McMullen, and I'm the co-founder of Disco.xyz, where you are the multifaceted center of the party, just like this disco ball, and you should reflect your data and your identity to the world however you decide. So with Disco, we make it easy for you to carry around data written about you in the same way you carry tokens in your wallet with your data backpack. And our APIs and SDKs make it easy for applications to discover more about you with your consent than just how much money you have. So if you're interested in learning more about credentials today or about Gossip Protocol, I can shoot some data out of my nails into your wallets and we can talk about it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emre, co-founder and co-CEO of Cenoa. And Cenoa is a global digital dollar account for emerging economies. So we help people protect from inflation, economic inequalities by giving them easy and free access to buy and sell dollars or invest in dollars or transfer dollars in a very economical way. And before Cenoa, I was Chief Product Officer and Chief Technical Officer at Getir. It's basically a delivery company like DoorDash, but in Europe. And before that, I spent about 10 years in Silicon Valley, and for about 16 years building products and leading technology and product teams in my own companies, as well as big companies like Getir or Nokia, etc. And thanks, Michael, for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for those intros. I hadn't realized this before, but so many of you have come from more of the builder background. Would love to maybe start there and really get a sense of what that journey felt like, where you decided, I want to turn this into the next stage and become the founder as opposed to just perhaps someone on the team. So maybe Winnie or Evin, I'm not sure which of you wants to take that, but why don't you start?
All right, let's start this party. So I guess, my sort of journey as a builder, really, I'm sure like many people in this room, began tinkering as a kid. And so through school, participating in hackathons, discovering the Bitcoin paper a little over a decade ago, aging myself here a little bit. But the experience of building for discovery, I thought was a joyful hobby that people did on the weekends. I didn't know that was something you were allowed to do as a job. And so I was probably in my 20s before I learned what venture capital was, learned what a startup was, and met people who had gone forth and built their own ideas. So then, moving through my career first in content and then into more hardware engineering and connected experiences, I learned the craft of what it means to build, the discipline of human-centered design. But it was after a few years at a company called Consensus, where I had the opportunity to work in Web3 full-time, that I started to realize some of the wonderful systems I had previously put in place felt really predatory based on a new vision of the world. And so it was realizing confidence in my own perspective of what I thought the world could be like, empowered by a group of other people who saw themselves as builders, not hobbyists. And so being able to acknowledge and honor my own desire to be like that and to believe in myself to take that jump, I quit working for Warren Buffett and put away my suit so I could work in an apartment above a pizza shop in Brooklyn.
Great. I also want to have that as my office. I'd love to maybe hear from you, Emre, in terms of you were going in the product side and building into that journey. What was some of those core challenges right at the beginning as you made that transition?
From a product manager to builder, I think in a way, entrepreneurship is, it's like being a triathlete, right? You need to do a lot of things at the same time. And there's really a margin for error is very slim. But at the same time, I think if I pick a job that is very similar to entrepreneurship, will be actually product management. It's mostly because what we are trying to do is build something people want and people even love, actually. And for that, you need to really focus on the customers, you need to empathize with customers, you need to listen, etc. And then, so as a product manager, I've worked over 15 years as a product manager or entrepreneur. And then it's very similar, that you keep listening to people, you empathize. And actually, funny fact, the inspiration of Cenoa was actually a cab ride with my now co-founder. And at that time, a very good friend from Stanford, we were at a cab, and at that time in December 2021, and then the inflation and devaluation in Turkey was crazy, and we were in a cab, and then the taxi driver was telling us that he's actually working all day, and that at the end of the day, before going to his home, he would go to an exchange shop to actually buy dollars. Even doing anything, and then before doing anything, and then just go home. And then we said, this is a huge problem, apparently. And then that actually really stayed with us, and then that inspired us to eventually start Cenoa. So basically, long story short, I think empathizing with customers was very parallel in product management and entrepreneurship in my journey.
Yeah. Thanks, Winnie. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit? I think that you guys are still early stage enough where customer discovery is probably a not insignificant part of what you're doing. So.
That's exactly why we're here this week.
Yeah.
So we started Gossip Protocol about 2 or 3 months ago, with the main ethos being, how do we take these amazing things that everyone else is building and actually create engaging customer experiences for us to actually start using these products. The way we're going to see mass adoption with blockchain is if we start seeing mass adoption with products within our industry first. So one thing that we're doing this week, which is boots on the ground, in the thick of it, we have developed a full, with Disco and Kiki World, a full stack hardware to software system that allows you to exchange verifiable credentials with everybody that you meet by just tapping the acrylic nail. So the way that I see us having adoption is by creating the least threatening products possible. And what's less threatening than a manicure? So for me, it's all about causing chaos, having fun on chain, and that's just always been the main drive for me.
That's great, and actually having fun on chain seems to transition nicely to Ali, where you're building gaming studios. So how do you feel that the game mechanics are really driving customer engagement, assumingly? Would love to hear more about where you began with that and really how you started to ideate on some of those initial ideas and then build from there, because obviously now you guys are up and running and funded. So, and to speak to that.
Absolutely. I think that gaming is a bit different than other products because, like in gaming, until like MVP, you really have to follow the vision of the creatives, and that is like you kind of have to believe what they're doing, and like the vision is a bit hard to test until MVP happens. So you have to, depending on your experience, depending on what you're building before, what you're playing, what you're seeing from other projects, and you just have to come up with your own kind of core game loop. Once core game loop is there, then you can actually start testing and the data comes in. But until that, it is a bit more like you just kind of follow a bit like blindly, because like you have to also build enough gameplay to prove yourself this is good or this is bad. Like you need to have that made this decision, but you have to still have enough features and you have to spend money. You have to kind of like build that. So gaming for us is a bit different, like than some of the other products, because also you see that successful game studios, they don't release successful games every time. Like sometimes they fail, sometimes they there's no like a fixed formula to make good games. And so in our process, I think it's a lot more creative and start with that. But after a while, of course, the data becomes a huge role. You test different feature sets from the players, then tweak those. And those parts are, I think, easier because then now you kind of prove yourself, okay, this is going to be a good game. And then after that, I think you can be a lot more relaxed.
Yeah, that's great. And it kind of leads me to the question around iteration and lesson learned, right? I mean, at the end of the day, not every feature or every product is going to work. This is a big part of the founder journey, I imagine. Would love to hear from each of you maybe around like one of those core lessons learned or something you wouldn't repeat doing again. I think that oftentimes those are the things that are, guideposts for people to avoid or just as helpful for those to go to. So maybe, Emre, why don't you go ahead and tell us some about it?
Sure. I think, so again, in my previous answer, I was telling you like build what customers want, but it's actually easier said than done. And one of the lessons that we learned, or I learned actually over the times is, there are now these days actually a lot of frameworks, playbooks all around, like you can find like in internet, in Twitter, like YouTube, whatever, like you can find actually a lot of frameworks, a lot of playbooks, etc. Having said that, oftentimes they are very specific to the situation, specific to the company, etc. And then in one method might actually not work for you, for your company, or for your situation, or for your users, etc. So, and having studied at the business school, then I geared myself up with all these frameworks and all these playbooks, whatever, but I realized in the real life, they often don't work. Or exactly, they don't work exactly. So I think one lesson is really, when you start a company, I think unlearn from what you learned from the past, and then really focus on the customers and build all the feedback mechanisms and triggers to a product, and just try to get as much as information, both quantitatively, qualitatively, and then really build their own product sense and customer sense to be successful. I think that was not the key for me, at least.
Evin, I saw you shaking your head.
Oh, definitely. I completely agree with what you're sharing here. I think it is imperative for us to remember that we work in the service industry as builders. And unless we contemplate the fact that our job is to solve problems for the human beings and entities and protocols that we serve, then we will not be in a position humble enough to hear not only what they say they want, but what they express their problems are, their challenges are. And so in addition to bringing empathy to the experience of, even a protocol, I think it's also important to, especially when we get really technical like that, one lesson for me that's kind of led out of it is that, as builders, we inherit the sins of our stack. And in a composable world, that means that the responsibility we have to one another as teams, as providers, is incredibly high. Most Web2 applications rely on more than 12 APIs, bringing data into those applications. And in Web3, it's usually about 1 or 2. And so the concentration risk we have on these connective points between our components, when we have such a vast array of beautiful Lego blocks to put together, for me, that has meant continuous communication. The only way that we avoid unintentionally inheriting sins of our stack is to use our words, to communicate with these other teams and with those who we serve to better understand where those kinks are. So for me, that has been an interesting and challenging lesson to learn in many different forms, but one that I found can always be served by better communication, whether with other teams or even just your documentation.
That's great. And the sins of our stack, this should be an album. But I'm curious, that actually makes me ask the question around really like prioritizing. And as a founder, you're in a position where every day you're having to make hundreds of decisions. All of them are going to ostensibly impact your product. I'd love to get a better sense of, avoiding technical debt, right? The sins of your stack. But then like, how are you as like, what are your like mental models, if you will, for making decisions? So maybe Ali and then Winnie, I'd love to hear you guys speak on that.
Absolutely. I think one of those key lessons to learn is like you have to be absolutely brutal to your own product. And that is very key. You have to be honest. And I know sometimes it kind of lowers the motivation of the team. And you may find out yourself in a bit like an uncomfortable situation. But if you find out your product is not good enough when you release, then either you don't know what a good and bad product is, or like you're overly positive or optimistic throughout the whole development. So for us, it is a very important way to make that kind of like brutal decisions and like make sure that it's a really good project, really good game, and like it shouldn't be a surprise for people. Like once you find out like it's not good enough, like you have to really convince yourself, but at the same time of course you want to be like a positive, but you have to be really control that feeling, because you're building something and you might lose your objectivity through your own product, and that's very key, especially in a game studio, because we have so many different backgrounds with people like technical people, designers, creatives, business people. So sitting down and actually making that like a kind of decision together is very key for us. So that I would say, also I think it goes for other startups as well, to be like brutally honest in your own product. And everyone is there to make sure that we can make the best possible product, and don't that is kind of the way I think I would say that would be the best.
The one thing that I have found really difficult with working with hardware is how different it is to working with software. Mostly because you got to understand when East Asia wakes up. So sometimes decisions have to be made at 1 a.m. because you need that to be ready for It's been a lot of iterating, and it's been a lot of sprints to try and build something that we're doing at the moment. And and it's then making the decision that you think is going to be best, but then how quickly can we iterate on this if it's wrong? So right now we've realized that we've destroyed half our hardware this weekend by cutting it down, because it's all about trying to find the product market fit for the right people. But it's like, okay, cool. Then how do I iterate on this without spending so much money changing my supply chain?
That's a good challenge to try and figure out sooner than later, I imagine.
Oh, yes.
I want to pivot, because we probably are getting near our time. Would love to get a sense from you all, like what's been helpful, what's been not helpful. Every VC is going to promise you a million introductions and that they're going to be very helpful. No comment. Part of our program with Codebase is building a program that will help early stage founders grow into companies. So in so much as you can tell me, what should I avoid? And what's been helpful for you? Would love to hear what you have to share.
Wildly unsolicited advice from people with no familiarity with your work who address you as a female founder, not particularly helpful. However, what is really helpful is having other founders who you have the opportunity to speak with honestly. There are some challenges that you can't talk to your team about, that you can't talk to your mom about, that you can't talk to your mentors about, your investors, your partner, your dog babysitter, whoever you hang with. There are some challenges, whether technical or personal, that I think are often best counterweighed by someone who has a shared experience. And so find your people and pull them up with you. Because I've also found that even in really challenging moments, taking a second to step back and to show up for another founder helps you kind of get back in the driver's seat and remember why you're there in the first place. So for Codebase, I would encourage, peer-to-peer support. And I would encourage you to please only refer to all people with their gender before the word founder, not just women.
Good advice. Thank you. Emre? You've seen a number of companies, so tell us what happened, what went wrong, what went well, what was the best support?
Well, I mean, as you were saying, like I definitely agree with Evin that, especially founders, for instance, like we right now operate more than 40 countries, and then being expert in more than 40 countries is just like very difficult. But wherever we go, we recently launched in Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, for instance, and then initially our knowledge was limited, but when we go and talk to entrepreneurs there, and then they were very deep in their knowledge. So that definitely helped us. Like as Evin said, I think it's great that entrepreneurs give each other support in terms of tough times, rough times, but at the same time, they know a lot because that's what they do. They learn, they figure out problems, etc. So, which was very helpful for us, was really connecting entrepreneurs all over the world to really understand the market, the products, etc. I think that's one. And I think in crypto, I don't know about you guys, but being in consumer crypto industry, like we definitely felt the headwinds in terms of like the bull run or in terms of like all the scandals, etc. I think being with trusted partners really helped. Like we end up joining, like or becoming one of the 7 companies for MasterCard's StartPath program, and that actually helped us because after that people say, oh, okay, you guys are not just like any other like random guys, like you guys are with MasterCard, etc. So that was very helpful. So really associating with like a trusted brands, and I think Avalanche also will be a good example for like what you guys are doing. And really going back, I mean, I keep saying the same thing, but really at the end of the day, like wherever you meet the customers would be great. Like we actually end up going to a bunch of conferences in Nigeria or like panels in like some other countries, etc. That actually helped us a lot. And what was not helpful, I already told, like I think the old frameworks or like all the playbooks, etc. I mean, they worked at some point for some people, but it doesn't guarantee that they will work for you, for your users, for your product. So that will be the answer.
That's great. Winnie?
I would say the best thing that I have found being the most supportive is finding communities to align with. So for me, it would be like Shi-Fi and Boys Club. So it's people that I can see myself in. It's like I do look at male founders and I look at their journey, and that is absolutely not applicable to me. Therefore, I feel like their advice does not align with the journey that I'm on and with the struggles that I have. If I find other founders who, you know, they're doing similar things to me, that just feels like, it just gives you that confidence as a founder to kind of grow. So yeah.
That's great. Ali?
Yeah, so I think one of the things like, from advisors, consultants, investors, of course, they're all there to help you, but of course, no one knows better than you, like your own product and your own company. So you shouldn't be afraid to making decisions, and sometimes maybe you have some conflicts. So I mean, and also because they're not really spending all their time, right? I mean, you're there to do that. So I see entrepreneurship as it's like an enlightened despotism. That's how I describe it. You have to listen and observe all the views, but then it's at the end it's you make the decision. It's it's not a democracy. Like you don't run things in democracy in entrepreneurship, because at the end, if things go bad, then you'll be the founder, and no one, of course, will take responsibility, like the consultants or advisor, which is fair. So I think you really have to listen to everyone, but then at the end you have to sit down, either yourself or with your co-founders, with your team, to make a decision. So that is, I think, one of the most kind of helpful advice I can give. But I agree as well. Like it's like you really, it's a bit lonely being an entrepreneur, I think, and your co-founders are very important that you can talk to, other founders as well. But also, I think your family and people you're close to. I'm actually very lucky in that front. So I can talk to my wife about many things. So and she's very supportive. So I think those things are kind of important, because sometimes you also want to talk to some people, and as you said, it's never easy. And so that is, I think, the thing that you have to spend more time with your family and friends.
Well, thank you, everyone. It sounds like you should all just go and find your community. That's what we're hoping to do here with, obviously, Avalanche and then Codebase as well. So, I really want to thank our panelists today for sharing a little bit about their journeys. Really enlightening for me. Hope everyone else enjoyed as well. And I think we're going to take it away from here. Thank you very much.